Hello and welcome to this episode of the Rest Hall Wrestling channel with myself and, of course, Gareth. My name's Kieran, by the way. And we're going to be talking about AEW Dynamite, of course, and the fact that it's been around for a whole year. And we're going to be wrapping up the whole year with a couple of favorite things, whether that be the achievements that it's made, the moments that it's created, the matches, maybe an MVP, a star that's really stood out for us, and then a disappointment, something that we hope that they should improve on for the next year. So, yeah, we've just got a list individually, respectively. We've got something to bring to the table. We haven't talked about this prior, myself and Gareth.
No, we didn't do it. We probably would have spoken about it on the last stream, but obviously we didn't do on this Wednesday. But yeah, it's been a year, hasn't it, Kieran? And it's been a very enjoyable year. I think it's fair to say we can speak for both of us on that. It's probably the most I've enjoyed watching. Well, it's definitely the most I've enjoyed watching a wrestling company, at least for a long time, anyway.
Yep.
In my viewing.
Yeah.
Experience. The best year. I don't know how many years I've done where I haven't taken a break in terms of watching specifically WWE.
Mm-hmm.
There was a while back in the day I watched TNA, but that kind of died. But yeah, definitely the most enjoyable that for myself it's been. I imagine yourself too.
Yep, you're bang on. This is the most I've ever enjoyed wrestling in my entire life. It goes without saying. There's going to be a huge amount of bias here. There's going to be a lot of favoritism here because at the end of the day, I think something that you were sort of touching upon, it's been incredibly consistent throughout the year. There's been some dips. There's definitely been some things to improve upon. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And we're not going to go into everything because otherwise we'd be here all day. But they've had such good, strong points throughout the year that at this point, it's just a thing of I'm really appreciative of the fact that it exists. Yeah. So, talking about good stuff, let's start off with the MVP. That's the one I've got at the bottom here. So
I was gonna say that save that to the end, but we can start off with that if you want.
I think because I think we'll leave the Dynamite focused ones towards the end because it's about Dynamite, at least that's the way I'm thinking of it. But either way, right, I'm tipping you over the edge. Right, MVP then. I'm interested to hear yours then.
Okay, well, I was gonna go Hangman, but then literally just in the moment when you brought it up, a thought crossed my mind. And it's something I had this conversation basically on who's been the wrestling MVP on Twitter. So that's throughout all of wrestling. And I was adamant, like Hangman Page, you can't really. He's been if you're talking about it in terms of what one person would I absolutely not replace, I think it's no contest. It's Hangman or Kenny, just purely because that story has been by far the best thing in wrestling for the last year, let alone just in AEW, in my opinion, anyway. So that will be for me. Mm-hmm. But then someone raised the point when they were arguing for MVP from WWE to be wrestling's MVP, that you've got to look at what you've got around you as well and kind of measure that up. And then thinking about it that way, Hikaru Shida really pops up because she's literally carried that women's division. And she's just pretty much, I can't think of anyone in that women's division who hasn't had their best match with her. She's completely raised it, and like everything's been good in that women's division throughout all the struggles they've had, whether that be in terms of availability of talent, the lack of time that they get on Dynamite, or the lack of care and booking at times as well. Hikaru Shida has always been someone who's kind of risen above, and was someone I think everyone had their eye on in terms of who was going to be a star, but maybe not this much. So I think there's a very good argument for her as well.
All right. Cool. I just want to speed things up, So it's kind of funny, really, because we've both gone for a female wrestler, which I think is really cool, actually, considering people have a lot to say about the women's division within AEW.
Yeah.
Personally, I've taken the route of MVP in regards, like, in thinking about MVP, I'm thinking of, because there's so much good talent. There's so much people, and if you took one person from any division, there would be a massive hole. If you took the best friends out of tag team division, yes, they wouldn't be at the top of the card, but they were so consistent. They were probably the most consistent tag team that there was on a weekly basis. Maybe FTR now, because they've just been incredible
I
since
think
they've arrived on the
FTR
scene.
now, but they've only been there like half a year, haven't they?
Yeah,
So
but like I'm talking about throughout the year in terms of,
yeah,
you know, on that playing field, because I was looking at the rankings during this and I saw that Best Friends, their tally of wrestler matches I think it doubles
yeah,
everyone else's on that rankings. Just shows how much they've turned up and they've provided us with something. So, you know, like everyone does their part. I'm just using Best Friends as an example. Everyone does. And I was
yeah.
thinking, right, who is the most improved? And for me personally, I can't think of anyone who's improved more since the day one of Dynamite till now than Britt Baker. Personally,
Yeah, I
in
think as well you've got that thing with her of she had a massive injury and still managed to be one of the best things on Dynamite throughout that, and then was also in that time when you had those 6 7 weeks, whatever it was, where they had to tape everything in just a few, well, 2 days or under 2 days or whatever it was. She was very prominent in that as well. Put on a really good match with Sheeta, of course, and that's kind of initially how she got over in ring. That was definitely a best match to that point. But like in terms of on the mic as well, and her turn, her heel turn, everything from there,
yeah,
definitely the most improved for sure.
I just went with that route. I thought because everyone has done their part in regards to their quality, but I'm just thinking from a point of view of who's who's changed over the past year for the better. And
Yeah,
you could say Hangman, but like I would say Hangman's always been great. Like Britt
yeah,
Baker has been. She was. I wouldn't say she was because she was by no means bad at the beginning. She wasn't.
mm,
Absolutely not. It's just there was no character. Her in ring, it was a bit shaky. You could tell that
yeah,
she was relatively new to the, compared to everyone else within the roster. And
mm,
so throughout the year, we've just seen tremendous growth, both in ring, both in character. Switching over to that heel turn, her chemistry with Shiviani was absolutely fantastic. It was a highlight of over Twitter. I remember weeks on end at that current time,
mm,
and then she had like you said, despite having an injury, she was still featured prominently, and we were all anticipating her returning for a reason.
yeah,
To see her again, to see because the women's division does sort of need her in a way,
yeah,
what she brings to the table, and that's something like I think we could go on about with women's division and characters and stuff like that. I think that's something that could be talked about at a later date, but
yeah.
yeah. So that's my MVP, just purely because the the wrestler back then to now, astonishing. You know,
Yeah, it's fair
that's me.
enough. It's a good argument.
Um, but up for interpretation. I didn't want to go
Let
for
us.
Kenny. I go on.
I was going to say, let us know what your who your MVP would be for first year of AEW Dynamite in the comments.
As always, we're going to be going through numerous topics here. So for each topic, feel free to let us know of each one. Absolutely, no doubt about that. And then we're on to our favorite three matches. I was ill informed during this time, but it's on me. I've chosen matches that didn't actually feature on Dynamite. They were on pay per views during the Dynamite phase, but I don't care. I I'm terrible. Gareth couldn't fill that void. I can do the rest. What about you? So, what are your favorite three matches, man?
Well, I've got six because I was planning on
Oh,
like just in case you did three of the same as me, I'd have three different ones to go with. Um, so the three I put, my favorite one was Pac versus Kenny Omega. I think in terms of telling a story, match psychology, that was the 30-minute Iron Man match, of course.
yeah,
In terms of even though I really wanted Pac to win this because obviously Kenny at the time that was just before they won the tag titles, so I was like, he doesn't need this. They're going for the tag titles. Pac, I was hoping was going to challenge
hmm
just after Moxley won. It was
yeah.
kind of in that kind of time. So even though it wasn't the result I wanted, the match was just so good, and it was amazing. I then put the Young Bucks and FTR versus the Butcher and Blade and Lucha Bros, that 8-man tag team
That
match,
was wonderful.
because 8-man tag matches are usually an absolute mess. AEW's proven that they're quite to very good at them, especially in this one was fantastic. And I think Meltzer gave that 5 stars, and that was probably one I agree with him on. In terms of like when you think about an 8-man tag team match, I've definitely never seen a better one, and I I'm sure back in the the late 80s and the golden age, they used to do matches like these a lot. So there are probably some really great ones from back then. But in terms of since the Attitude Era, this has definitely
Yeah.
got to be the best 8-man tag team match ever. I can't think of one which would be up there as well. And then I'm going to say all the ones I put just because we haven't got loads, but the one I'll give a shine to and put in my top three. I think in terms of it's very hard. I'm trying to because I've got ones where there's moments or things like that. But I'm going to go with Hikaru Shida versus Britt Baker from that the weird show where they had to tape it all and all that. We spoke about those two in our MVP picks, of course. But that was one where Britt Baker really got over. Hikaru Shida was on her charge to winning the championship at the time. And it was in a realm where we weren't in a time where we weren't getting very many good matches, and this one really stood out.
Yeah.
And like they weren't used to wrestling in front of no fans. At that point, it was still a very weird time. So in terms of overcoming an obstacle, there was probably a lot to do. I did also put Omega and Paige winning the tag team titles, of course, against SCU on the boat, and then their defense against Lucha Bros, that was really good as well. Chris Jericho versus Darby Allin, and also Moxley versus Darby Allin, those both stood out. But I think the Jericho one in particular stood out because it was so good. Like, I want to go back and watch it because it was one of my favorite stories that they've told in a match throughout the whole year. And then, of course, Private Party versus the Young Bucks, which we got a great moment in Private Party winning, but also the match itself was really good as well. So those are my top three, and then my other ones, which I kind of had in the conversation, just in case you had some. You went with pay-per-view matches.
Honestly, if I the only one that stood out to me that you haven't mentioned is Nyla Rose defeating Riho for the Women's World Championship. I think it was
consider that as well.
During February. I thought that was a relatively strong match as well, all things considered, so it was great as well. But to be honest, even if I did mention any, they would have been them. Because, of course, it was the Iron Man match. It was the moment with Private Party and Young Bucks. And that 8-man tag was absolutely phenomenal. I might have been tempted to chuck an FTR match there, depending, because they've been on fire. Like, so, yeah. To be perfectly honest, it's a cop-out sort of answer in a way, but it's just, and I said this to you prior to recording, but it's a genuine thing where it's just, there's just so much quality that I have to sit down. I have to really sit down and go through it.
You have to go over all. You have to come up with like a top 15 and then watch them all and then really analyze.
I know.
Those are just my favorite ones. There were ones which are better than a few of those, but those are the ones that stood out and when I think back to them, are the ones that make me feel happy.
Yeah, definitely. Talking of things that make us feel happy. Favorite 3 moments.
Okay, I'm going to let you start on this one.
Okay.
Yours. All of yours are Cody moments, aren't they?
So, for anyone who is a big fan of a particular bloke named Cody, right, you're going to love my picks. If you don't like Cody, then you might want to skip ahead. I'm just going to breeze past them. I like the segment early on in Dynamite's sort of reign. So I say reign when it's been aired. Cody and his boys, I've put it as, with MJF in his corner at the time. This was pre-turn and brawling with the Inner Circle. That was a lot of fun.
When they broke the door, wasn't it?
When they broke the glass window.
That
really stood out. I don't know, when I saw sort of moment that popped into my mind when I was thinking about early days. Another one was Cody in the strap segment with MJF, because that feud beforehand we weren't too fast on. We thought that they were really the feud in itself was lacking, and they were doing quite a shoddy job at it. And then this segment came around, and we were just completely. It was like a complete U-turn because they did it that well, MJF included, but Cody, of course, was involved in that as well. And Cody dropping the TNT title to Brody Lee, which again, it feels so cop-outy in a way to use Cody in these very moments, but like I sat down here, I was given you laid out these bullet points for this video, and I was well into it, and when I sat down and thought of 3 moments, a lot of it involves Cody.
Yeah. In terms of like creating moments, you've got to say like he
he has a
he
knack for
definitely
it.
yeah, for sure. And it's like it comes to the thing as well. Like Cody's definitely one of the best storytellers in the world, and definitely one of the best in AEW. And when you think of moments, me and you, particularly at least, are more drawn to moments which have some kind of story surrounding them and something that really grips us. So you say that MJF thing that pretty much sold the story, and it kind of saved that feud from that point onwards. Then it was the best thing in wrestling at the time.
Yeah,
Um, and so Cody as well, like we're always going to naturally probably be drawn towards moments which are grown within the story. And as well, you mentioned that Brody. I had all of those on my list, by the way, of like ones that I was gonna have. And if you think of that Brody one as well, that kind of came out of nowhere and then created this new story for Cody to then come back, and obviously he's won the title back now. But you know, obviously he was going away, so it was somewhere where they made a story out of something. They used an angle to start it, and that was really really good. Well, they technically it's a match, but it was
but like,
not really a match. It was basically an angle, but yeah, it
but
was so good.
it was so good, and it was so simple as well, because we saw prior to him losing the TN title, the seeds were there in regards to him being really overconfident, Arn
Yeah,
Anderson getting frustrated with his confidence, and he took Brody Lee for granted, and then look where he ended up. He was
yeah,
basically hospitalized, and then when he took the occasion more seriously later on, and there's a variety of other factors in there. I'm really simplifying it, but still, there's some thought gone into that, and the moments on top of everything
yeah,
was absolutely what top draw stuff. So yeah, that's
yeah.
just those are the ones that really stood out to me. I don't know if you've got any more.
Well, like I said, I had a few just in case you had the same ones as me, which you did have some of them. Some of mine still involve Cody, so I'm just gonna rattle them off. But Eddie Kingston debuting was obviously against Cody. That was
Yes.
all about Eddie Kingston, really, though the promo and just that whole thing. But Cody made that was well, he's half of what made that match so good. So that was one of my favorites, and it was nice to see him do that and then get signed off the back of it.
Yeah.
Um, you could have gone with like Ricky Starks' debut because he had a similar example where Cody basically makes someone look so good, and they're great as well. But like Cody is so good at doing that, and then them getting signed off the back of those matches, which Tony Khan said they weren't planning on necessarily signing them. It was kind of like a tryout, and if they did well, then they would have, and obviously they did. I also said Cody is undesirable to undeniable promo in there because that's probably my favorite promo from in terms of speaking in the ring kind of promo at least
Yeah.
throughout the whole year. And then the Cody moments end there, and I've got a couple from Hangman where he cost the Young Bucks. I thought that was just such a nice
Yeah. Definitely.
development of that story, and again, so simple, but with all the story that came before it, so effective. But then I think my favorite moment, favorite thing that wasn't a match basically throughout the whole year was Hangman Page's sit down interview with Tony Schiavone. I just absolutely adored it from a storytelling point of view. Hangman just sitting there, being invested in a character that just it nailed it for me, and that was probably my favorite,
Yeah. There was
personal favorite at least.
talking about promos. I particularly remember. I think that was stronger, but something that was somewhat on par, but a bit lesser maybe, was the Bucks. Hangman and Page. They had. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
they had a sit down interview with Jim
Before
Ross.
their match,
Yeah,
yeah,
and this sort of connection between them all leading into the match. We'd all seen it before, but just to see it all laid out in front of you again, Hangman with the alcohol and all that sort of stuff. It. Yeah, that was again really well done. But I do think the one you'll particularly put forward is particularly stronger, and even
yeah,
Kenny's during that moment as well was
yeah,
really great as well. So yeah, uh, just to say, Cody's a moment maker, and there's lots of moments in AEW to enjoy. Who
yeah.
who would have thought? Okay, so we've been on a big high here. We've talked about lots of good stuff. We're going to end on a high, but let's sort of talk about something that needs to improve, something that we've perhaps been a bit disappointed by. The biggest disappointment, let's call it, the thing that needs to improve that we feel is number one. And yeah, so I'll let you start this one.
Oh, okay. Well, obviously, the obvious one that's out there is the women's division that needs to improve, and whether there's excuses or reasons for them it not being where we'd all hope it is. It does need to improve. But I don't want to talk about that because we have already spoken about that so much, and we've done a whole video on that. Um, the one I wanted to bring up was something which isn't a weakness or something that's always there, but it kind of crops up, and it's basically, I can't really think of what it's called, but I just called it convenience booking. So Lance Archer not responding after his loss to Cody, he just did nothing, and it's like, don't really believe that his character would do that. But obviously, the one that kind of is still annoys me is Cody not really reacting properly to MJF after he was screwed by him. They didn't touch for a month and a half until MJF said that Cody couldn't touch him, and I was like, I don't believe that stipulation because Cody isn't trying to touch him, and it's all those little things. It's like I understand why. It's because they didn't have. There's not really enough of a story there to from where the turn happened, and it being in that big moment for Cody. There was like a month and a half until they wanted to actually build to Revolution. And it was just kind of, you're just sitting there every week. It's like, okay, Cody, you're fighting Butcher and the Blade, which was later then explained. I don't believe it was planned. I think they just explained it off as MJF. Oh, yeah, he paid him off because there was a lot of criticism around why is Cody doing this when
Yeah.
MJF's done that.
Yeah,
I think they
you're
kind
right.
of, that was a bit of a cop out from them. But even so, like the whole Butcher and the Blade, the way they entered was really bad as well. That's another criticism that you could have of them. But yeah, it's just this convenience booking. It crops up here and there, and it's like, particularly after someone has a big loss, sometimes they won't do anything as well. We're seeing it with Orange Cassidy, who lost against Brody Lee and then is now challenging again. It's just kind of one of these things where it's just like, if you just thought this through a little bit better, you could have done a different match for Orange Cassidy if you wanted to have him face Cody, if that's the bigger one, or whatever. It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. We haven't got to that much with Orange Cassidy and Cody yet, so I don't want to shit on that because there might be a really good thing that we just haven't thought of. But it's just this thing that crops up here and there, and it just kind of like, mainly because for the most part, AEW and Dynamite is so watchable and so good. Every now and then, when you see them do something where it's like, that's just doing it. You're doing it for convenience sake rather than because that's what the character would do. It's more irritating than it would be in certain other companies, for example, where you kind of expect that. That's wrestling.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. But yeah, I gather that's you.
Yeah, that was it. What's your disappointment?
Mine is more in the realm of what needs to improve more than disappointment, because I'm not really all that disappointed. I just think this particular thing needs to improve, and that is the rankings, or more so the utilization of said rankings. Which kind of falls into somewhat the same thing that you were talking about in regards to Orange Cassidy just turning up. It generally just wins, losses, a variety. Like, they pitch themselves as more of like they head into a more sports direction prior to actually going weekly, being aired on TV. And at the beginning, it was going fine. And then as time continued, it then became very clear that they were sometimes ignoring it again for convenience sake, which kind of falls into your point really. And sometimes they've hit the nail on the head. It's been great, but other times it's been a bit conflicting, a bit eyebrow raising. Orange Cassidy turning up for one, it just feels like I just think, and again, the women's division could have easily brought that up. There's some fairly obvious ones which has been they're just like a dead horse at this point. Like, you just keep beating at it. I can't be bothered to do that. I'd rather talk about something that's just a little bit something that we don't pay too much attention to. And it's just the rankings and the utilization of said rankings and getting it better, because. And sometimes I do think they put themselves. I think COVID hasn't helped them particularly, because with the way the best friends look with their win-loss record, like, it's ridiculous compared to everyone else. Like, I don't think anyone's in the double figures other than Hangman Page and
FTR are now.
FTR now.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. And like, it took this long, and best friends were there months ago, like, and so it just made sense them having title after title. It's just, and only now we're getting. I don't know. It's just weird. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's just. I think we're coming into the new year not long from now. Hopefully things will be easing up. If anything, things will become more easy for them.
yeah. They
Utilize
get a
number
fresh
one. Yeah,
they get a fresh start at the start of the year as well, don't they? So
yeah, utilize number one contendership matches more if you feel the need to.
yeah.
A video that will be going up shortly after this. We're going to be talking about Foley, and I've got an idea for number one contendership stuff.
I
You
think
know,
on that point as well, number one contenderships. I look at like the UFC, and if they're doing like if you win this, you'll get a title shot effectively in a more contenders match. Sometimes you'll see like the fifth or sixth ranked guy facing the second or third. It's kind of who's available. Obviously,
yeah,
that UFC is different because guys only fight a couple of times a year, probably at maximum. There's guys who fought like 6, 7 times a year, but they're usually lower down the card trying to make a name for themselves. The bigger guys fight maybe twice, maybe 3 times a year. So it's kind of convenience sake a lot of the time there, but you can't do that. If you've got it doesn't necessarily have to be first versus second. If you've got a match to make, and you can build someone up for a bit and then have
I
them lose
think
a number one
yeah,
contenders match, and it's like a high stakes match where you can still make a star out of even if they lose, or still boost them a little bit. I think definitely something I
yeah.
like to do more of.
And even then, if you're going to ditch the rankings for a particular feud that you want to put forward, I think just maybe just provide a little bit of effort leading
Yeah,
to said match rather than Orange Cassidy just turning up and bringing up the thumbs up. Like at that, like at least for me in particular, at that moment, I was led. Like I'm not going to go too long, but I was a bit disappointed in that particular segment there because I would have loved to have seen like an opponent of Cody's choosing, depending on the character, someone that he's admired. It's been a year
yeah,
of Dynamite. I want to face someone that I've really admired throughout this year. Just it's a very Cody move, very typical stuff. But it's just like,
yeah,
again, that's just a great way to just get someone in for that period of time. It's just it's already got the story laid out there rather than a bloke turn up with the thumbs up. Just a
yeah.
bit of effort, just a little bit of effort.
I think on that one, there is the thing. It's like an open challenge. So if someone comes and challenges Cody, he's going to do it. But thinking about it from AEW's point of view, they don't have to send Orange. It's not like he's just walked out there,
Well,
with a mind
yeah,
of his own. He's a character who,
it's yeah, but
so
I don't know
it's
because
still booking, isn't it?
you say that though. Like I was on AEW's website not long before this recording, and like there's a rankings for it. The
Yeah, yeah,
AEW World Championship and the thing that they are ranking for that the both titles
yeah.
respectively. So yeah, it's just that's the thing. We've done that now. We've Let's talk about some good stuff. Let's talk about
More
the thing.
positive.
Let's end this on a high note. What has been the biggest achievement for Dynamite in terms of Dynamite for you?
I've gone with adapting as like an overall kind of thing. So adapting in different areas. So obviously, with something like the pandemic being thrown at you, that's something that everyone's had to adapt to. But I think AW's kind of handled it. I don't know if they've handled it the best or what, because I don't watch every company, but they've handled it very well. I think when it comes to matches like Stadium Stampede, you had Omega and Hardy versus Les Sex Gods, which obviously was very gifable and just very fun. Those were kind of in there a little bit. And then more recently, we've had like Best Friends and Private Party. There was Young Bucks versus Butcher and the Blade as well. So they've gone with those kind of. They've looked at, okay, we've got these limitations with no fans, but we've also got an opportunity to do things where you wouldn't be able to do matches like these as easily when you've got fans, either because of you know just having accessibility to the entire building or whatever, or just because you don't want to have fans sitting in the seats watching a screen or anything like that. So they've really adapted well for those kind of matches. They've adapted well to changing on the fly. So again, when the pandemic came in, I think that very much shifted the Omega and Hangman story. Obviously, they planned the Blood and Guts match, which it seemed like they were building something big for, and they had to cancel it because ultimately you don't want to do that without fans. And again, went to the Stadium Stampede. They've had situations like where someone gets COVID, and they've adapted well, and situations like that. Not always, sometimes there have been situations where they've had to do something and not go well. Something like the Matt Hardy situation, for example, is something where something that wasn't planned, where they made the wrong choice, regardless of whether it was ended up being fine or not. So not always, but generally speaking, adapting to those situations well, changing in plans in particular as well, because we hear all these things about, oh, this is supposed to happen, and then we signed FTR, so we incorporated them into the ongoing story, and it's worked out way better than you could have imagined if they didn't, you know. And then finally, when it comes to things that they've tried and didn't get over with the fans, so the Nightmare Collective, they just scrapped it because it wasn't getting over. Things like the Dark Order, obviously, people. I don't think we were necessarily super angry with it. I wasn't super into it, but I was willing to see where it was going to go.
It's quite
But ultimately,
passive, yeah.
yeah, but most fans were like, "This is crap," blah 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 blah. And when it has been situations like that, when it's been a fair situation, there was fair criticism of the Dark Order at one point. They changed it, adapted it, and now they're one of the most over things in the company. So yeah, adapting as a whole, I think they do it really well. And obviously there's situations they haven't. But yeah, that's what I went with in terms of their biggest achievement. How about yourself, Mike?
Revitalizing tag team wrestling as a whole.
Very nice. This is kind of the obvious one, which is why I didn't pick it. But you go ahead.
Oh, fine then, mate.
That
Fine.
sounds like I'm being a massive dick. Like, I didn't pick the obvious. I didn't pick it because I thought you were going to, and so I thought I would go with something else. But yeah,
This purely comes from a selfish background in that for the first time in my personal life, a tag team match is my favorite of this year, and it doesn't seem like that's going to be changing.
I don't think you're the only one. You're nowhere near the only one.
No. I've seen loads of people agree with that.
Yeah.
So that in itself for me was just like a really welcome and something that if years ago I would have known about, like in years to come, a tag team match would have been my favorite. I wouldn't have believed it. As ridiculous as that sounds, like sure, if it was like a stipulation match or something like a ladder match or something ridiculous like that, then sure, I might have thought. But in terms of like a pure, typical singles championship tag team match, it didn't have much in regards to hardcore like chase or anything like that. It was just pure storytelling and all this good stuff. And so they had that highlight of a match. They've had Lucha Brother, like Lucha classics in regards to just outrageous stuff. Butcher and the Blade have just been utterly entertaining. Best friends. And talking about top matches, buddy, that parking lot brawl, that was one hell of a match.
Yep.
That was a tag team match. The Stadium Stampede, if you want to call it that, like, because that was technically a load of blokes. It's a bit different given the obvious stipulation, but basically, Vince didn't give a shit about tag team wrestling. New Japan don't particularly give a shit about tag team wrestling.
They care when they've got the talent, or when they've got one idea, they'll care, But like
generally, they just don't.
Yeah.
They don't. And I'm not using that as a huge, like, you pricks. It's just like, that's just the reality of the situation. They don't care all that much. And AEW, I think, have done a really clever thing where they've went all in on the one thing that I think differentiates them a lot more than other companies at the moment. And that is a proper tag division. Because you could say Impact's got a great women's division and stuff like, but so's NXT. Like, New Japan are put on like absolute classic, like classic matches, month in month out with whatever tournament that they have going at that given occasion. But then NXT might have a takeover and provide like incredible singles matches. You might get a top tier story match over in main roster every once in a while.
There's great matches kind of in every company, but
there's
one thing that none of the big companies are really doing. Impact apparently do have a pretty decent tag team division, but I don't think it compares at all. I don't watch Impact anymore, but
well, I haven't heard a single thing on it.
From what I've heard, it's good, but like it doesn't compare basically.
Yeah, but the thing is, they went all in, like all puns wherever. They very much went all in on it. And I think that's really benefited them and them differentiating themselves, They're saving up on really top tier singles matches from time to time as well, which is always a good
Yeah.
thing. But the thing is, it's not like a sacrifice, like a New Japan thing, where it's just a tag team match. And it's not just. No, we've seen some great matches with Taichi, Zack Sabre Jr.,
Yeah.
and Ibushi, Tanahashi. They've had some really great tag team matches, but it's not often you'll get them. It's not. It's
Yeah.
just not.
Unless Roppongi 3K are involved.
Oh, but yeah, basically they have revitalized tag team wrestling big time. It's not even
Yeah.
a little. It's like it's become
It's
a
their
real
biggest
high.
strength, isn't it? It
It's
literally, in terms of speaking about their biggest achievement, it is undoubtedly that.
it's yeah. You could talk about adaptability. Like they've been phenomenal. They've handled the pandemic better than anyone. I think maybe New Japan maybe a bit better, but I think
In
there's
terms of
different.
safety, definitely.
Yeah, but I think that you got to compare a weekly schedule with a Torley schedule.
Yeah.
Yes, there's some factors at play. US is a bit more radical than Japan. Blah 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 blah. Regarding the whole virus thing. So
Yeah.
yeah. All in all, AEW has been a breath of fresh air in
Yeah.
wrestling as a whole. There are definitely some things to improve upon, no doubt about it. But let's be honest, it's been a freaking year. Like, and I'd be interested to see what NXT was doing in its first year.
It was
Like,
it was still pretty crap. No.
um, you
Although to
know,
be fair, that was not
that's not to say
put
no,
to the
but
same
like,
level. But
no,
yeah,
but they're very much
it's a
at
different
different places
conversation. Yeah.
because NXT at that very time was very much developmental. It wasn't trying to be like a faux third brand in a way. It was
Yeah.
very much in its developmental roots and it was sticking in that direction. So, and that was completely fine. But in regards to a first year, hats off. It's been the best wrestling for me personally on a weekly basis. It's been a load of fun being with you every single Wednesday night. It's never been boring. It
Yeah.
hasn't, even if it might lack in some areas, there's some high spots in some areas as well, or it can be the most consistent thing in and out. It's just you never know what you're gonna get. It's just a variety of good stuff. So yeah. I'm just thankful AEW exists because I don't have to watch the main roster. I don't have to do all of these things anymore. I can just tune in on a Wednesday night, have my fix of top tier stuff, and then that's it.
How would you rate it out of 10?
Oh man, I'd give it a 9.
Yeah. I probably have to agree. When you consider it a first year, it probably, in terms of being a first year and stuff, you can make the argument it's 10 because it went above my expectations of what we were going to get to at this point. But in terms of generally speaking, I'd say a 9.
I
For
think
us.
this.
No, it won't be
this
for
yeah.
everyone.
No, it won't. But I think they've had to tackle a pandemic.
Yeah, and they've
We-
still kept it. If anything, the product's only got better since that initial little blip, which obviously everyone had with the pandemic. Since that, it's arguably got better.
They haven't done any mass firings, like other companies. I'm not saying like that's going to change a whole lot of things, but at the end of the day, the company's doing good stuff. It's respecting its talent. It's respecting us. It's doing the best it can with the tools that it has and the talent that it has. There's definitely some stuff to come a long way. Serena Deeb I'm a big fan of her recent match, Big Swole.
Yeah.
Like this. We talk about you say about the women's division, but there's stuff there. There's seeds there for something great. Take on to all these variety of things. They're building in it.
Just like they do it now.
Yeah,
The women's
yeah.
division, it's that build on that, and it will be very hard for people to keep criticism. People still will, but it'll be hard for them to do so. But that women's division definitely just want to see it improve now. More talent getting back, people there to develop now.
Most importantly, out of all things, I think story and characters.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you can
I never thought I'd see him wrestling.
because
not on a consistent basis, anyway.
Because you can have all the great talent in the world, but NXT will tell you during its bad days that if you got people lacking character, there's only so much that these guys can do. They can put on great wrestling, but there's little emotion coming out from me from people that I don't particularly have no reason to care about, and I have no investment within. So that's not like a humongous jab at it. It's just like, here's an example of where I'm not invested in because there is a lack of character and storytelling. They need to do that with their women's division and in AEW.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have. And another thing, before we finish up, I have faith
Yeah.
that they're going to do it.
Yeah, you trust the company.
I humongously trust the company. Like, just humongously, because there's been times where I've not expected things and they've went out and did those things, you know? But then there's been occasions where you expect some other things and then they don't, there's no sign of it at all. So, but I have faith. I think that's a big thing as well. So,
For sure.
that is our little wrap up of the first year of Dynamite. We've rambled on for 40 minutes here. If you've been here to this end, thank you ever so much. It's been a big old joy chatting with you, Gareth, on this.
For sure, mate.
Chatting about stuff that people do good at. Who would have thought?
Positivity.
It's something you don't see. This is what makes the channel unique, right? we're not crapping on people, right? Yeah. So if you enjoyed this, subscribe, all that great stuff. Consider liking, consider subscribing, consider leaving a comment. What was your favorite moments? What improvement would you like to see in the next year? Hopefully you'll be with us for the next year where we talk about the second year. Who knows what'll happen by then? So thank you for joining us, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Goodbye.